After 24 seasons, 17 playoff appearances, and an NBA championship in 2011, Donnie Nelson is out as president and general manager of the Dallas Mavericks. This is the Gray Area right here on Kevin Gray Sports. My name is Kevin Gray. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. You can catch me on your home of the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Rangers, 105.3 The Fan. The Dallas Mavericks and Donnie Nelson have mutually agreed to part ways after 24 seasons, 17 playoff appearances, and an NBA championship back in 2011, as the Mavericks have announced that they are hiring a search firm to try and find the new president and general manager of basketball operations going forward for this basketball team. In a statement provided by Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks, Cuban says, quote, "I just want to thank Donnie for his 24 years of service to this organization. Donnie has been instrumental to our success and helped bring a championship to Dallas. His hard work, creativity, and vision helped made him a pioneer. Donnie will always be a part of the Mavs family, and I wish him all the best," end quote. So the search begins now for a new president and general manager of basketball operations for the Dallas Mavericks, coming off of the heels of a bombshell story by the Athletics' Tim Cato and Sam Amick describing the role and tension that has started to take place within the organization as director of quantitative research Bob Voulgaris began to take more and more power within the organization. Now, there are conflicting reports on whether or not Voulgaris will remain a part of the organization going forward, but nonetheless, whether Voulgaris remains or is also out as a part of the Dallas Mavericks, there obviously, it seems to be a change coming in regime for Mark Cuban and this basketball team, because this is now fully on Mark Cuban. After a season where you lose for the second time in as many seasons to the Los Angeles Clippers in the first round, and also on the heels of Luka Doncic being eligible to sign his 5-year, $201.5 million rookie max extension by virtue of the fact that he was named to a second consecutive first-team All-NBA selection for the second consecutive year. This is a massive summer for the Mavericks with respect to not only their future going forward and how they build a roster around Luka Doncic, but who has the capable vision of leading this Mavericks team forward, knowing the generational superstar that they have and decisions that they have to make with Tim Hardaway Jr., Kristaps Porzingis, Josh Richardson, and others, just to name a few, and what this team will look like going forward. For Donnie Nelson, though, a model of continuity for the past 24 years and remaining a part of this organization, helping build a championship roster back in 2011 that, of course, beat the Miami Heat. Now the page has been turned by Mark Cuban and Donnie Nelson, this organization, into the next portion of this future, whether or not Bob Voulgaris continues to remain a part of it going forward. We saw how he continued to take more influence as far as this organization was concerned, with having influence on rotations and lineup changes, also personnel decisions, who he more or less approved by Donnie Nelson, who was the one making those moves, who, of course, acquired Kristaps Porzingis and Tim Hardaway Jr., J.J. Redick, among other plenty of trades in the last couple of years, but more so over the last recent years, where a lot of folks have felt the criticism of Donnie Nelson was warranted given the lack of an ability for this team to build around Doncic in the last couple of years, but more importantly, how this team organizationally has not been able to put itself in position to have the kind of sustained success that it had once Dirk Nowitzki retired. Obviously, Nowitzki, the greatest Maverick in franchise history, bringing a championship to this team in 2011, was found by Donnie Nelson. Luka Doncic also found by Donnie Nelson. Giannis Antetokounmpo was also found by Donnie Nelson, although the Mavericks did not allow Donnie Nelson to pull the trigger and draft one Giannis Antetokounmpo years ago. But nonetheless, this is a man who has put himself in position to be a basketball Hall of Famer eventually, and had the kind of sphere of influence, not on just the Mavericks, but in the entire NBA over the last 25 years, to put himself in position to have the kind of recognition that he has. But this now is about the Mavericks and how they move forward. Here was the former president of basketball of operations, Donnie Nelson, talking about the future of the Mavericks and what he was looking forward to doing for this team from that standpoint, and what he thought he was going to be doing. Here's Donnie Nelson.
Yeah, as you guys know, we'll be aggressive in the offseason. It's a big summer for us. We're looking forward to putting the other building blocks in place. We look internally first, as we always do, and we like a lot of the things that we've seen. We think as a young team, we've kind of taken the next step. Obviously, we ran into a little bit of a veteran buzzsaw. Some of guys that we were, slapping up against took it to a different level, and but as we try to figure out again the pieces to augment our situation, we'll meet with Rick, Mark, obviously the staff in the next couple of days, and hit the ground running in Chicago.
So Donnie Nelson, obviously thinking that he would be able to be a part of this future going forward, now obviously no longer a part of this basketball team. But again, this goes back to Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, who decided to put Bob Voulgaris in a position of influence and empower when he hired him back in 2018. We saw the story about how he had major influence on the draft picks in the year 2020 with Josh Green and Tyrell Terry. This now is on him and how he decides to move this direction going forward, because, again, this isn't just about Donnie Nelson. This is about Mark Cuban retaining Rick Carlisle as the head coach. Whether or not the next president and general manager of basketball operations would want to retain Rick Carlisle going forward, or if that decision is going to be left up to a guy in Mark Cuban and how he's going to continue to move forward from here. So here's the real questions now that we have to start asking. One, how does this team move forward in terms of free agency? What they decide to do with guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., what they decide to do potentially with Kristaps Porzingis via trade, or what they decide to do with Josh Richardson if he decides to opt in to his $12 million option. Number two, your new president of basketball operations, whomever he or she may be, being searched by a search firm hired by Mark Cuban. How much of an influence and decision will they have to decide on Rick Carlisle's future if he remains a part of this basketball team? And then if you're Cuban, how much influence do you allow this new individual and your president and general manager of basketball operations to have in terms of the decision-making going forward? Because Cuban has said previously that he has all final say when it comes to personnel matters. That will be tested given what this team has decided to do in moving on from one Donnie Nelson, and if that person who comes in now will have the full support of Mark Cuban to make the kinds of changes that he or she may want to make with respect to how this team goes forward. We've already seen folks throw out names like Masai Ujiri of the Toronto Raptors potentially try to be a guy that the Mavericks try to look at and try to bring in to run their operation. But regardless of whomever they bring in, the culture change has to be different, and Mark Cuban has to lead that charge in allowing whomever takes over to make the kinds of decisions that are in the best interest of Luka Doncic. Because all of these moves, how they are moved forward for this Mavericks team, have to be centered around your 22-year-old generational superstar in Luka Doncic. So whether you decide to move on from Bob Voulgaris because of the internal tension that him and Luka Doncic have with one another, Donnie Nelson obviously being removed at this particular point, all moves have to be made in consideration of what Luka Doncic wants, because they only made one of those. And you've got to find a general manager, a president of basketball operations, maybe even a new head coach who fits what Luka Doncic wants to do going forward, because he's going to sign that rookie max extension worth over $200 million. All rookies who have had the kind of massive success in their first few seasons that Luka Doncic has always signs the rookie max extension. So it's about what happens not only this upcoming season, but the following 5 seasons after that, to ensure you're building around Doncic year by year so that he's not in a position where he feels like he can't trust Mark Cuban, the new president and general manager of basketball operations, because that relationship going forward now is going to be the most important for this basketball team, whomever they decide to bring in, because you've got to have your generational superstar and your new president and general manager on the same page. But this all goes back to Mark Cuban and what he is willing to do to put his basketball team in the best position to succeed going forward, now that Donnie Nelson, a model of continuity and consistency for this team, for all the criticisms that you want to heap upon Donnie Nelson, which are fair, what Mark Cuban, will decide to do going forward. That is the most important move next when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks and what they decide to do from a personnel standpoint when it comes to their executive and front office. a big day for the Dallas Mavericks as they see Donnie Nelson, after 24 seasons, 17 playoff appearances, and an NBA championship, mutually agree to part ways with this Mavericks organization, and the questions continue to abound about whether or not Bob Voulgaris remains a part of this organization, whom will be brought in as the new president and general manager of basketball operations, what that relationship will look like between he or she and Luka Doncic, and more importantly, if they decide to have the ability to be able to retain Rick Carlisle as the head coach, because that kind of stability now has been rocked, given the fact that you heard Mark Cuban give the public adoration and admonishment for Rick Carlisle to be remaining the head coach, but all that could be tossed out of the window by the idea of now a new president and general manager stepping in for the Mavericks team. We shall see. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all of these Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. This has been another episode of The Gray Area. We'll talk to you later. Peace.